What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the DraftKings Cash Game Lineup Builder Show here on Roto Grinders. I am Britt Devine, joined today by two Titans, two guys who have been around a long time in the industry. We got Mike Heda, Hoop 2410. We got Head Chopper David Kaplan. Hoop, I want to start off with you real quick here. We kind of had the big news of the day just a little bit before the show came on. For basketball, DraftKings, they're giving us multi-position eligibility back. I like that move. They're taking away late swap. I like that move too. There's a lot of tussle going on in the industry right now. So real quick, what's your kind of take on the NBA late swap thing?
I'm celebrating hard on both changes. Love them both. I mean, the multiple position eligibility, I think, is a lot of fun. It makes it a lot more combinations you get in your lineup. I think it's more strategy involved when you actually are going through lineup construction. So I like it a ton. And then I know the late swap is the big contentious issue, but I think it's, from a personal standpoint, I think it's amazing. Married with two kids, it's great for me personally. Don't have to sit on my computer from lock to after the last game starts. So for me personally, I think it's great. I think it's just great for the industry in general. A lot of newer players, a lot of people that I know recently started on DraftKings, they had no idea late swap even existed. So when there's that sort of feature and, newer players really aren't in tune with it, I just think it's an unnecessary edge to experienced or veteran players. So I think it's awesome. The arguments against, I don't really understand the people that are all mad. I mean, just, build solid teams, know the sport. I mean, to say that, now you can't play on a site because they don't have late swap, that's kind of admitting that you're not actually very good at the sport to start with. So I don't really see the arguments against it.
Yeah, you're kind of the family man. So is Chop. Chop, what do you think? Now you don't have to sit around. Now you go spend time with a family. You can watch the games and actually enjoy the games without having to kind of worry about roster moves now. What's your kind of take on the late swap?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be able to watch the games now. That doesn't mean I'm going to spend any more time with the kids.
I definitely don't want to do that.
But, I mean, as a guy who's in Texas, so they don't let me play on FanDuel anymore. So I was kind of stuck with – not stuck, that's a bad word. But I was forced to play DraftKings. That's where the big money is now, with no FanDuel for me. So I've always been a fan of no late swap. I liked it when you had the option of either site but I don't have that option. For me, this is good. I mean, I don't mind it because, like y'all said, it's that ties you down for another 3 hours after lineup locks. Originally, you're tied up for another 3 hours tracking news. It becomes really tiresome.
We're already doing this all day anyway. I like having those 3 extra hours after lock to kind of myself, whether it's to watch games or do something else. When you already do this all day, every day, like we all do, those extra 3 hours, those kind of add up to a quality of life thing. So I'm very happy with it. I think it's a pretty good move from DraftKings, business-wise, getting rid of it. Now everybody's on the same playing field. It keeps the new players in the game a little longer because late swap in NBA, that's where it has the most advantage for the pro players, guys that are heavy users, that are playing a ton of games. You gain the most edge in basketball over any other sport. So I understand DraftKings getting rid of it for that sport while keeping it at others, a little bit less edge to be gained. Just kind of keeps new players in the game a little bit longer. More rake for the sites. The sites have to survive now, guys, too. They're at the point where they just can't raise hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars anymore. They have to start turning a profit. So if it keeps money in the accounts a little bit longer, I guess we got to live with it. And I'm just fine with it too here. So, Hoop, let's get into the cash game show here. That's why all these people tune in every week here. And I want to get your thoughts on first, because this is Thursday. We still have the Thursday and the Monday night game available on here. Is there anybody on this Thursday or Sunday night game that you're looking at in cash games? We were kind of talking a little pre-show, Hoop. Carson Palmer. I'm going to have John Brown on my Thursday lineups. I absolutely love him at his price tag around the industry. Those are two guys I'm giving heavy consideration to.
Yeah, I mean, this week in terms of the lineups, I think there's a lot of solid plays at every position. So whereas in previous weeks, I think we were able to nail down 3 or 4 different type of locks or close to lock type plays. I don't think that's necessarily the case today or this week. In terms of the Thursday and Sunday games, I am interested in the Denver passing attack, and I'm interested in the Cardinals passing attack. I think the receivers for the Broncos, Emmanuel Sanders, Demaryius Thomas in play. And then for the Cardinals, I think guys like Carson Palmer, Larry Fitzgerald, and you had mentioned John Brown as well. He's really cheap on DraftKings. I think he's in play. as well. So those would be the 4 to 5 guys I think that I'd potentially be targeting if playing this Thursday, Monday slate.
Chop, who do you got? I think Hoop gave us all the main guys are in contention. I like the Denver receivers, but I think they're kind of priced appropriately, so I'm not sure if those guys are going to make it onto my cash teams. This is a cash show here. I do Carson Palmer, 6,000. He's way down the totem pole here, and we just saw the Jets have been getting absolutely obliterated. You want players that can get that 300-yard bonus passing. I think Palmer's in line for that this week here too. I love him. I like Fitzgerald too, but that price on John Brown, we saw what Sammy Coates, that kind of deep threat, just did to the Jets here. It's looking like Revis is out again here. How do you not play John Brown at 4,400 on DraftKings?
Yeah, I think John Brown's a solid play this week, and he'll go underappreciated because the time slot in that game and everything. I think you hit on all the main points there with those games. The passing attack of Denver, I played very little Thursday through Monday slate. And the stuff I did do, I did stack Seaman with Simeon.
Nice one, Chop.
with both of his receivers, more or less give me something to watch. But because it's a good matchup too, everything's shaping out real good, and you can't trust the Denver backfield. On the flip side, actually, I have Melvin Gordon on there too because I just think his price is so down this week. And I think he's going to be a check down machine, a lot of screen passes, and on DraftKings that's going to be pure gold. So I don't think he's worn off his efficiency. It's not there, but the sheer volume is going to make him a decent play this week. So that's where I think all the bases are covered in those two games.
Looks like I got a nice sound clip to use against you for my little video appearance that you made using my name last week. So I'll make sure to have to get that back at the end of the week here. All right, so that's going to kind of do it for the Thursday and Monday night analysis. But let's move on to the main slate, and it kind of covers for the Thursday games too here. Hoop, I'm going to give it to you. I talked to you pre-show. This week I have 2 must-haves in cash and probably 3. I didn't tell you guys who they are, so I want to see if you guys are following on the same players I am. And Hoop mentioned, if you've been following this the whole season, our team that we've basically come up with has been money. And that's why these are going behind the incentives starting next week. So this is the last free cash show, the FanDuel cash show on Wednesday, along with the 2 GPP shows on Wednesday and Thursday. Those are going to be behind their respective incentives next week. So you are going to have to pay for the premium product to get these. The Friday lineup builder shows, those will stay free because they use the free lineup builder, and we want you guys to be able to play along with them on that show. But starting next week, because we're so money on this show, we've basically forced the hand of Roto Grinders Hoop. We have to go behind the paywall.
Valuable information right here. Unfortunately, no longer free, but it'd definitely be worth it to pay because, like I said, these lineups have been spot on. Not to toot our own horns, but I've essentially been playing pretty darn close to these lineups, and I've kind of been printing some money over there on DraftKings. So definitely worth it to pay if you want to continue on with this video.
Chop, let's give me one of your must-have players on a cash team this week. I got 2 in my own head, probably 3. So let's see if all of our thoughts align like they usually do here. Who's the first guy you got to have in this week?
First guy, hands down, going in the cash game, no doubt about it. Le'Veon Bell.
Yes. All right. So that's definitely one of mine. So explain, do you even really need to explain your thought process? He's $2,100 cheaper than Antonio Brown. And even if Le'Veon Bell was $9,500 on DraftKings this week, I think I'd probably still pay for him. He's the top running back. He's also like a top 15 wide receiver, kind of all over. Absolutely amazing here, Chop.
Yeah, he's that guy. I mean, the most encouraging thing to me is that the guy's fresh off like a year ago, less than a year ago. He suffered that terrible knee injury. Like, he hasn't shown any signs. The best part is the Pittsburgh people haven't shown any doubt in him at all. I mean, they fed him since the first game back. I was kind of a little leery that first game back. And then the second game you saw against the Jets, like that's a top 3 defense against running backs in the NFL. And yet he still managed 25 points. Like, that's how matchup proof he is. Now he gets a good matchup on the road. Not that big of a price jump at all, just $400 from last week and the week before that. So, yeah, he's just a lock and load. That's pretty easy.
Yeah. Per Scott Barrett, he's a Pro Football Focus writer. Hoop, Le'Veon Bell, over the past 2 weeks, he's played 6 less snaps at receiver than Antonio Brown, and only, I think it was either 15 or 20 receivers have more snaps as a receiver than him over the past 2 weeks. Plus, he's getting 20 carries a game here. He is the stone cold lock for me. DraftKings, FanDuel, any site I'm playing on, Le'Veon's going to be on my cash team.
I mean, literally every possible thing working in his favor. I mean, it's hard to find a knock against him. To me, the most incredible part is the fact that coming back from injury, small sample size, 2 games, he's averaging 25 fantasy points per game, and he has not found the end zone. He hasn't scored a touchdown in 2 weeks, and he's averaging 25 fantasy points per game. If he finds the end zone, I mean, the upside.
He's going to have a couple 2-touchdown games and 40-plus fantasy points. I think.
I mean, it is just such a safe play, and just easy to get him in. 7.9K. I mean, if he was approaching 10K, he'd still be a guy that I'd be considering this week. So
yeah, I'd want him over Antonio Brown, and it's not particularly close for me this week.
Yeah. Just a phenomenal spot. Just everything adds up. I mean, over the years, we've seen the Steelers passing attack be much more efficient at home opposed to on the road. So, I mean, they are on the road here, so maybe they even, feed Bell more. Who knows? I mean, just everything possible working in his favor this week.
All right. Chop had Le'Veon Bell. Hoop, let's see if you can come up with my second must-have of the week here. You got the pick of the board here. Who's the next guy that you have to have on your cash team?
I'm going to stick with that position there, running back, and I'm going to go to Jordan Howard. The workload this guy's getting is incredible. I mean, one of probably 7 or 8 running backs that's just getting all the work, getting the carries, getting the goal line carries, getting action in the passing game. Coming off a good game last week. It's a solid matchup this week at home against the Jaguars. Only 6.2K. His price has raised more on other sites, but 6.2K, I think that's still way too cheap for the workload and the matchup this guy has this week.
Yeah, Chop, the Jaguars, 29th in Football Outsiders DVOA against the run so far this season. 29th, there's only 32 teams, so that's third worst for some of you guys that might not be good at math out there. Are you using Jordan Howard, Chop? I'm going to counter Hoop. For $700 more, I can get LaShawn McCoy, Chop. So where are you sitting between those two guys?
I like him too. Don't get me wrong.
Well, I was going to say that there are a handful of running backs between those guys, littered all up and down there that are solid plays. It's going to be real tough to figure out which one. You narrow it down to one running back to fill in next to Le'Veon Bell. There's a lot of good players this week. I like McCoy. I like Jordan Howard. The thing I like about Jordan Howard, I'm not going to play the Bears defense in cash games, but just looking at the numbers, I like the Bears defense this week. So if I like their defense, that means I kind of like the Bears to actually maybe win this week. And if they win, he's really going to rack up the carries, maybe 25 carries. There's a lot to like about Jordan Howard this week, and I like him. And at this point with what McCoy's doing, you can't go wrong with him either. He looks explosive.
Yeah, him, and then DeMarco Murray, throw in the mix. Michael, you can throw in that mix. I even like Ingram, Lamar Miller. I mean, there's a ton of running. I mean, the plays are.
Miller's the guy that's going to go so overlooked. He just hasn't fell in the end zone. After last week too, they kind of just gave him a rest game after they were getting blown out because he's been getting all the carries. He's kind of going overlooked. What do you think, Chop? Do you think he's going to be pretty popular? I think he's going
to be popular. I like him. I think he's a good play, but I do think he's going to be popular just based on the snippets I've been taking off of social media.
Lamar Miller?
Yeah.
I think McCoy's even double him up.
I think he'll be super, super low on this week. I mean, you look, hasn't found the end zone coming off an 8-carry week. It was against the Vikings defense, but I think he'll be low. I love him in tournaments.
Okay, well, if that's the case, then let's just take him
up.
Yeah,
take him off the board. Let's not talk about him no more.
Yeah, that's it. Let's move on.
Telling you, he's not going to be chalky. He's probably not going to be very chalky. I think LaShawn McCoy will very easily double him in ownership, probably even like triple or quadruple whatever Lamar Miller is in ownership.
Okay, looking at the price, it is so close right there that I understand you probably have to make a decision between those two guys and even a couple others, and you probably are going to lean. You're just a little bit more to McCoy, so I get it.
All right, so I'm going to
if there's one thing that Britt and I know in this industry, it's chalk.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to put your guy, Jordan Howard, in here, Hoop, and we'll kind of discuss this back and forth. If we have $700 extra, I think I prefer McCoy for $700 this week over Howard, but you really can't go wrong with Jordan Howard at $6,200. So I'm going to leave him in here. He was not one of my I got to have guys this week. So, Chop, let's see if you can come up with another one of my must-have guys this week. We got quarterback open. receiver, flex, defense. I don't know if you want to get defense out of the way just so we can sit where we are with salary, but give me your next guy.
Yeah, I honestly have no idea. Well, I think I might have a slight idea who your most owned guy is, but I don't want to go there just yet. So let's go ahead and, I mean, we could pull the defense out so we can start seeing what our salary is going to shape up to be. I would say right off the bat, we can plug in. It's a tough one, man. Defense is all over the place.
Well, there's one team that's going to be 50% on this week.
Man, you're going to have to let me know who it is because maybe the Patriots. I don't know. But personally, I think that looking at this, maybe the Steelers look pretty good this week. So, I mean, maybe you put in the Steelers and see if you need to go back and change that later on. But they've got the premier matchup in football right now against a team that can't protect their passer anymore. And I don't know.
So, Hoop, I bet you know who the chalky defense is. I'm looking at the Bills here, and the Bills are like, I got to have the Bills this week. They're getting all these sacks. Colin Kaepernick, if you look back at his sack rate historically, he gets sacked at a very high alarming rate. San Francisco's defense or offensive line, they've been giving up plenty of sacks to Blaine Gabbert. Kaepernick likes to hold on to the ball. You've got west to east for a 1 p.m. game with a new quarterback here. The Bills are my lock for cash game defense of the week.
See, I like that play. I mean, I like the play. I mean, the problem is they're right up there as the most expensive. The team I was going to say is the Texans.
Yep.
At home.
The Texans?
Yes. Colts giving up just an enormous amount of sacks. I think the Bears sacked Andrew Luck like 8 times last week. And, I mean, their offensive line is a complete mess, 2.9K. So I like the Texans.
The Texans. What about the Titans, Chop, here? I think we can argue anybody playing Cleveland. Cleveland's on the road here. Tennessee, I think they got that touchdown last week. No, they just kind of lit up the Miami offensive line quite a bit here with Tunsil kind of out there. Really kind of boosted their value a little bit here. I think they're in play too, 3,300. I really think the Bills are just so clearly going. Like, I think the Bills in a 100-man 50-50, they're probably going to be like 40% on this week.
I don't know. I mean, just because they're so expensive, I don't think they'll be that high. But could be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the Titans, I do like them quite a bit. Actually, Cleveland is kind of falling into what we thought they were going to be. That first game against Miami when Kessler took over here a few weeks ago and actually put up some points because Miami's so terrible. Now Cleveland's kind of struggling a little bit. So yeah. I could see the Titans being a good defense this week. As far as chalk, I don't really think there's a defense out there this week that's going to demand. Even though I do like the Bills, I agree with what you're saying. I don't think there's one particular defense that's going to demand all the attention from people. I think it's going to be spread out pretty good.
I'm going to be doing everything I can to get the Bills in here. But for this, some of you guys like cheap guys, some of you guys like expensive defense. Are we okay with putting the Titans in here? It's kind of like a mid-range defense, and we can kind of move up. We can move down.
I'm fine with that. Yeah, it works.
You good with that, Chop?
Sounds good.
All right, we'll throw in the Titans here. Hoop. We got quarterback open. There's one guy I'm definitely going to have at quarterback this week in my cash teams. At receiver, we're wide open here. So quarterback's a position where we can kind of do a lot of things this week, although I think all my focus is going to be on one specific player. Why don't you give me a receiver here that you're looking at, and we can kind of fill in quarterback maybe towards the end.
So receiver, I mean, there's not a ton of standout value.
Why don't we talk? Let's kind of talk about Antonio Brown's price here first. So basically, every week we've been doing the show. Let's put Antonio Brown in our cash game lineup. And to me, this week, Hoop, I can't pay the price tag. 1, there's not as much value as there has been in previous weeks. 2, the price is up. 3, Ben struggles on the road just a little. And while I expect Antonio Brown to absolutely dominate this matchup, I just don't have the savings elsewhere to get him into my lineup. So what's your take on Antonio Brown?
So, I mean, you can make it work. I mean, and we've said it for like the past 3 or 4 weeks here. Like, if you can pay for Antonio Brown, you just do it. And it's conceivable to do it this week. I mean, you can definitely get him in there and still have a pretty solid lineup around him. But, 10K this week, typically a guy we like to consider more at home opposed to on the road. I'm fine passing, but, if some elite value opens up in the next few days here, he's one of the first guys I'm going to put in my lineup.
Yeah, I would agree too. Right now, I don't think I'm focused on Antonio Brown. I just don't have the money. Chop, how are you approaching him this week?
Yeah, I mean, I find it hard to not see a scenario where he is projected to be the number one wide receiver again this week. He is every week, and this week's no different. In fact, with all things being said, he might even be a better play this week than any time this year, as a matter, because it's been easy to fit him in your lineup up until now. People have, and they've been slightly disappointed. This week, they won't take that chance again. They're going to fall for those home road splits. They're going to have him out of their lineup. And this is probably his best matchup of the year, to be honest. Miami secondary is terrible, man. They're going to try to guard him with maybe a guy who used to be a receiver in college. It's pretty bad. So
if we put him in here, we don't even have a quarterback in, and we're already, so the minimum for a quarterback would be $5,000. We're already at $4,500 left. That's going to basically put us on Tavon Austin and a cheap tight end and a bunch of, garbage players the rest of the way here. I don't know if I can do that job.
Well, no, it's not. I was just giving you some facts. I didn't say put him in there for sure. I just
wanted to show everybody at home.
With that being said, you should be playing a cheap tight end in cash games this week anyway. So with that boosts it up even more. You can make it happen, like Hoop said. Actually, it'd be pretty easy to make it happen, but it just depends on your preference. If you want to spend that kind of money on one guy, some guys don't like that because they're not going to get the pure value. But the fact is, if you're looking for a safe floor, he's the guy.
Yeah, he's gonna, like, the floor is 20 DraftKings points, and the upside is 40. But the 10K price tag mixed in with the lack of value currently right now, it's Thursday. I just don't know if I'm going to be able to pull the trigger on him this week, Hoop. So it's your call, Hoop, here. Let's get back to receiver. I just wanted to kind of break down Antonio Bryant and our thoughts on that, because that's a big thing. We've had him in just about every week here so far. I think this week we're going to pass on him. So who else you got for us?
So, you can definitely make it work. I think the value that's the reason Chop kind of mentioned the past few weeks, the value's been there. The pricing has been a little softer, so it's been super easy. Just go ahead and plug them in. This week, not going to be that popular, the price increase and the lack of value. But if you were going to do so, a wide receiver I like it on the cheap, it's going to be Cameron Meredith, 4.1K.
That's my second lock of the week
we're just locked in on him. And, he's the sample size is relatively small. He had the big week last week, but, super promising what I saw, the connection between Hoyer and this guy. Hoyer was locked into him, saw 12 targets, 9 receptions, 130 yards, and scored the touchdown. He's only 4.1K, like I said. I think it's certainly a fine value play. There is some degree of risk here, but at 4.1K, I'm willing to go ahead and embrace that.
Yeah, if I wrote up in one of my incentives articles this week, if you combine him and Kevin White, so if you combine their receptions, I think he's 4th in the league. If you combine their targets, he'd be 2nd in the league. If you combine their yards, he'd be 13th in the league. And he's basically just kind of taken over this Kevin White role, Hoyer from the second team, Meredith on the second team. There's a solid connection there. The Jaguars defense, they are off a bye, Chop. I think they might get someone back from suspension this week. If he matches up against House, a cornerback out there, absolutely lowest graded cornerback at Pro Football Focus so far this season. So if that matchup comes out, it's an A-plus matchup. If they switch it up a little bit in the secondary, I'm a little bit more worried about it. But at 4,100, I think he's going to get targets, probably 10. I think they're going to be passing quite a bit here. How do you go wrong with Meredith, Chop?
No, at that price tag, he becomes a cash game guy. You should definitely look at it. I totally agree with that. And I would say that if that's the way you want to go down there, then you should be playing Antonio Brown because it falls into place if you're going to take Meredith.
All right, so we'll put Meredith in here for now. He was my second lock of the week here. So my 2 locks were Bell and Meredith. Those are guys I'm basically going to be playing almost everywhere this week on my cash teams. Chop, who's the next guy here? Do we want to talk quarterback? Do we want to talk receiver? I still don't know. If we want if we want part of that Cam Newton, Drew Brees game, I don't know if we can afford Antonio Brown here. So if you're going to go cheap at quarterback to get Antonio Brown, we're going to need a cheap guy that probably can get us that 300-yard bonus. So that's something I always like to hit for in my cash game. So where do you want to go from here?
Well, as far as that Brees Newton thing, I would say that most weeks I would be chomping at the bit to play Cam Newton in this game, but because of that concussion,
I agree completely with you.
So with that being said, I think I'll wait on quarterback. I'm going to go to tight end and knock out a real easy one. And you're going to go cheap at tight end. There's a lot of value out there, but the guy I probably look at right now in the week that looks good to me is Dennis Pitta. If Smith is out again, you're going to open up even more targets for him. The Giants have been decent in past couple of weeks defending the tight end, but they're an atrocious tight end defending defense in general. I mean, Richard Rodgers is not a threat like last week, and some of the matchups will be good for him, but they can't defend the tight end. He's going to get some extra targets. He's pretty good. You can go even cheaper than that if you wanted to, but he's the one guy that I was looking at.
Yeah, I like it. I really like. I'm not expecting Steve Smith to play either, Chop, so he didn't practice today. I think Pitt is going to be a lock for these 7 to 8 targets. There's upside for more too. You get against this Giants team who's going to be at home. Maybe they can put up some points. You've got this new offensive coordinator too. So that's always a little risky in Baltimore, but you got to think it's going to be the Dennis Pitta show. It's going to be the Terrence West show this week, especially with Steve Smith out. Hoop, anything out there that makes you not want to use Dennis Pitta? I got a couple of really off the board tight end plays if we want to get Antonio Brown in here. So real quick, what's your take on Pitta?
Yeah, totally. I mean, super safe play, and if Smith is out, I think the upside becomes pretty present there, pretty massive. So I'm on board with that. Another guy, I like Zach Ertz a little bit as well. Pretty chalky play last week. Disappointed for the most part, but he was out there for basically all the passing plays. So I like him at 4K. And I think the cheap guy you might be talking about is Charles Clay, right?
I got an even deeper one for you there. Right. But I want to break out a couple of guys for you. First, there's Kobe Fleener. I think he's catching on to that playbook here. Drew Brees likes his tight ends. I think this is about the time last year where we saw Ben Watson kind of ascend fantasy-wise here. 3,500 for him. I think he's in play. Jesse James, I want as much part of this Pittsburgh offense as I think I can get this week. And he's finally starting to run a lot of routes. He really wasn't doing it earlier in the season. They're letting him run some routes here. I think he's certainly in play here. A big red zone target. If you get a touchdown from your tight end, your whole week's money. You mentioned Charles Clay. He's out there. But let me kind of bring up something, and I know you guys are probably going to think I'm crazy here. Let me find this Houston game.
Oh, don't do it. Do it.
No, so if Ryan Griffin's out, guys.
You're going – I know where you're going. You're going for Dorowitz. That's my guy from college, man.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about him, Chop, here. Indy, pretty vulnerable against tight ends. 8 targets last week with Griffin out, 5 the week before.
I wasn't
Antonio Brown. Is this worth it?
I wasn't going to pull this guy out on a cash game lineup builder, but I was eyeballing him. If I know Ryan Griffin is out, which I'm not familiar with the latest news on him, but I know he limped off the field last week and got taken to the locker room. If he's out, Fedorowicz moves in there. He's going to get targeted. Osweiler likes his tight ends, man. Even though he has 2 good wide receivers, he likes his tight ends. He's definitely a deeper play for me. With that kind of price tag, I could see it in cash games, but I wasn't going to use that in a cash game builder, but I definitely he's on my radar.
It's slightly interesting to me. Hoop's over there like, who's this guy? I have no clue who that guy is.
I'm trying to I'm Googling him right now doing some research.
Another guy, what do you think of Jordan Reed? Probably not going to play this week. Are you going to take a shot on Vernon Davis, Niles, Paul at all?
I'm not. I mean, Cousins spreads it out as it is, and without Jordan Reed, I don't know. I mean, maybe look more to the wide receivers potentially, but I don't have much interest in either of those guys.
What do you think, Chop? Vernon Davis, Niles Paul, they're both 2,500 as well here, but Philadelphia plays really slow. They've been really good against the tight ends this year. Probably not the spot where I'm looking to save a couple dollars here with those two.
No, I mean, I wouldn't even – I mean, Jordan Reed was kind of struggling to even make a mark in this offense. He's getting targeted a lot, but neither one of these, especially Vernon Davis. Vernon Davis is terrible now. There's no way I would play him. Niles Paul, maybe, but I just don't think that there's going to be a big need for the tight end this week. So for that reason, I'd far rather go Fedorowicz if I'm going down in that price range.
Yep. What do you think, Hoop? I love Greg Olsen. I love Gronkowski. I don't think I'm chasing with Martellus Bennett. He had that huge game, but his snaps went way down with Gronk back in there. I think Gronk is clearly going to be the number 1 tight end, and Martellus Bennett's probably going to be relegated to 60-ish% of the snaps per game, while Gronkowski plays 85, 90% here. I'm not chasing Martellus Bennett this week. Do you think that's a smart play on my part, or are you looking at Martellus Bennett at all? Just $200 more than Pitta.
No, I'm gonna stick with Pitta, but I mean a couple names that do stand out. slightly above Bennett. I like Jimmy Graham and I like Kelsey too. I mean,
every single guy above, all of these guys are in play for me at the top.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely in play. It's just a matter of roster construction. And, I tend to agree at this point in the week. I think it's probably best served to save yourself some money at the position. But, if you got a couple hundred more and maybe Steve Smith plays, which, Pitta would lose a little bit of appeal, I think Graham is in play. I think Travis Kelce's in play. And they're only, so it looks like $600 and $700 more. I like both those guys.
Chop, we didn't even hit on Zach Miller. We've already got Meredith. And we've got Jordan Howard in this lineup right now here. Should we just go all in on this Chicago offense here? The Jaguars, they are pretty good against the tight end. That's kind of the one thing they have been able to stop this year. But this is kind of like, you got Hoyer. He likes the tight end. He likes the second unit receiver in Meredith he was thrown to all season in practice. It looks like there's a legitimate thing here. So Miller's 3,800. It even saves us 500 over your boy Pitta.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that I'm definitely considering, but in the makeup of our roster that already has 2 Bears, I wasn't going to go 3 Bears deep on a cash game roster, but
you could make a case for Hoyer too. All in, like, you could use Howard, Hoyer, Meredith, Miller, all in cash. I just don't know if it's safe to do it all in the same lineup.
Well, that's the point. We're doing one lineup here, and I didn't want to go overboard on the Bears, but it is kind of like what you see in basketball. Sometimes you get guys injured, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, you can load up on an entire team, stack that whole team if they're only going to run 7 or 8 guys out there in their rotation. And so the Bears are kind of like that. The prices are so cheap on them that you could actually do that in cash games, and it's not a terrible value. But just for the sake of this, I would if I got the other 2 Bears in there, I'd probably leave Zach Miller off. But I do think Zach Miller in a vacuum is a good play this week.
All right, Hoop, let's talk quarterback because maybe I'll kind of give my thoughts out here. So there's one quarterback I'm using in cash games this week. It's Drew Brees. He's 7,900. This cap system on DraftKings kind of blows my mind. Drew Brees should be like $9,000 this week. He's at home, 33 fantasy points per game at home without any 300-yard bonuses thrown in there since 2011, 23 fantasy points on the road. He's at home, a horrible Carolina defense. I think they're going to be able to put up points against the New Orleans defense as well here. Last year, I think Cam Newton had 6 TDs. I think there were 8 touchdowns total, maybe even more than that. The game scored a ton of points. Basically a lock for that 300-yard bonus, in my opinion. I'm going all in on Drew Brees on DraftKings, and on FanDuel, it's not even a question over there. I'm all in on Drew Brees there, where he's just significantly underpriced compared to some other players out there.
Yeah, I mean – I love him this week, and I think he's a super, super safe play. The yardage is going to be there on DraftKings. You get the bonus for the 300 yards.
When there's a lot of talk. Like a guy like Tyrod Taylor's out there, and Tyrod Taylor's not going to get you a 300-yard bonus this week. He gives you some rushing upside, maybe a rushing touchdown. But on my cash game quarterback soup, I almost always strive for that 300-yard bonus. So Breeze is basically a lock for that. How do you approach your cash games and kind of the second or third tier quarterbacks that just don't always hit that 300-yard bonus?
Yeah, I mean, you obviously want to try to touch on that bonus if you can. I mean, it's massive. Like I said, it fits Drew Brees' scoring perfectly. But I like Cam Newton, too, at the top, honestly. I mean, I know some concerns, obviously, with the concussion. But I look at it like this. I mean, they need to win at this point. I mean, they've looked pathetic. Part of me says, maybe, he won't run a lot because of that concussion, but they need to freaking win. He's a competitor. I think he's in play too. And honestly, quarterback position, I have not come close to locking anything down at this point. It's wide open to me. I like both these guys. You talked about Tyrod Taylor. I'm not opposed to playing him either. I mean, 5.3K gets basically the best possible matchup he can get at home against the 49ers. I'm fine with him. I like a lot. I mean, I like Alex Smith. I like Brian Hoyer.
Thursday, Carson Palmer,
safest option.
Carson Palmer is completely in play too.
Palmer, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Palmer's the other guy. If you're playing this other slate, I mean, 6K for him. That's a steal against a Jets team that can't stop the pass.
Yeah, Chop. I kind of side with Chop here. I'm a little worried if it's 1st and 2 or 1st and goal from the 2. Are they going to run shotgun and then Cam Newton just bang it up the middle there? I don't know this week. And on my cash games, I rarely play the I don't know Chop. So if you're spending up here, Chop, how do you You're going to go to Breeze, right, over Cam Newton there?
This week, with the slight worry I have in Newton, I would, if I'm spending that kind of money, I'm going to Breeze. I would say any other, like 99 times out of 100,
I would agree.
It's being just like this, it would be Cam Newton for me, and it wouldn't even be close. But because he's coming off a concussion, and I just don't think they want him to take any shots at all. Maybe they call a couple less running plays for him, or he decides to step out of bounds a little bit earlier instead of getting that extra 10 yards. There's a lot going on there that would lead me to Breeze, but that's a tough decision because nobody offers the upside that Cam Newton does in fantasy football at this position.
I'm gonna put in Breeze for the time being, and if we need to mix around some cheap quarterbacks, we'll go to it. But I think I'm going to be shoving Breeze into all my cash teams this week, and I would agree with you, Chop. Every other week here, I would be paying $200 for Cam Newton, but I'm a little concerned with the run game, and this is also why I'm not concerned about it with Carson Palmer, because he's not going to be running from the 2-yard line on the 1st and 2 into all those defensive linemen. He's a thrower, not a runner. So I'm not really too worried about Carson Palmer in that take here. Let's go receiver here, and we're running out of money, guys. We've got about 5,500 left, 2 receiver spots, and a flex. I guess I kind of took that one, so maybe it's still Hoop's turn to pick a guy. So let's see, Hoop, who you got for me here? My third guy who's kind of teetering is kind of right around where he'd fit into here as a must-play this week. So I want to see if you land on him, or who else are you looking at receiver?
At wide receiver, I guess nothing stands out as like a lock to me. I mean, with the last couple spots here, it kind of come down to what we can afford and what we cannot afford. But I think you're most likely, when building these lineups, going to end up somewhere in this mid-tierish range, maybe like 7.2K down to like 7.6-7 potentially. You see guys like Jeremy Maclin at 6.3K. I think he's a fine play. Come up a little bit higher. I'm good with Edelman at 6.8. Even Jarvis Landry is 6.9.
That's my guy, is Jarvis Landry.
Yeah, I like Jarvis Landry.
He's the guy teetering, and you're going to look, Chop, people are going to look at this last week. 3 targets for Jarvis Landry. What a bum. A completely different situation this week. Tennessee, they're actually good at slot cornerback, and Pittsburgh is the worst in the league. The guy, Sean Davis, is his name. He's 1/10 out of 116 over a Pro Football Focus. If you get the advanced statistics over there, you can just see how really bad Sean Davis is. I think I'm about to go all in on Jarvis Landry, me personally. So what's your take on him off a 3-target game?
How do you get the advanced statistics at Pro Football Focus?
Hey, I just got to say, Chop.
You must know somebody.
You can. I do the Pro Football Focus show on Thursday nights.
Okay, good job. Well, yeah, Landry is definitely a guy who stands out to me. Everything shapes up for him to. Not only was the matchup tough last week, there was weather issues out there in Miami with the hurricane. There was a lot in that game that was a little odd. So yeah, he's definitely due for a bounce back. I do like him. We're talking about point per reception over here. We're talking about needing a safe floor. He's going to resume getting his 10+ targets in this game. He's going to be perfectly fine. And you get a little bit of a salary reduction off of what he was the past few weeks. And there's a lot of value out there. And we'll get to another scenario here in a minute. There's plenty of value out there to make him work, along with another good play too.
What do you think? I think a lot of people are looking at Jeremy Maclin this week too, Chop. I don't know. What's your take? Is it worth $500 for Jarvis Landry? I just think as good of a spot the Chiefs are in, they've got Jamal Charles back. And while we don't know, we didn't even really hit on Jamal Charles. A word came out just before the show that he's fully healthy, but they're still going to probably ease him in a little bit. He's just 5,100. So if some speak comes out later in the week, hey, we're going to give Jamal Charles 15 touches this week, then I think he becomes very, very playable on DraftKings. But until then, I think I'm avoiding him. So what do you think of this Maclin versus a guy like Landry? I'm a little worried on Edelman. Someone mentioned him. There's just so many targets in that New England passing game now. It's not like last year where it was Gronk and Edelman. They've now got Hogan and Bennett. They've got pass catching. Blunt's been pretty good here. I'm a little worried for Edelman at 6,800.
Yeah, no, there's no Edelman for me this week, at least until we know he's healthy. I mean, maybe that's the problem. Maybe it's not just a lot of targets. It just might be that foot really is acting up, and He's having a hard time. So there's no Edelman, but between the two guys you mentioned, Macklin and Landry, I would definitely lean Landry for 500 more. But I wouldn't be opposed to playing both of them in cash games. I do think Macklin is a good play this week. And the whole Jamal Charles situation, like I'm just don't listen to the coaches. Okay, they're not going to tell you anything good right now. You've got to get closer to game time, and then you start hearing things. Like I'm talking about Sunday morning, you'll start to hear little tidbits come in that lean you to figuring out exactly what's going to happen. But at this point in the week, you're just going to run around chasing your tail if you're trying to figure out how they're going to use Jamal Charles this week. But I like Macklin. I like him as much. He's slightly less than Landry, but enough to play in cash games for sure.
Yeah, it's just rostering Chiefs passing game players in cash games. It's just always a little bit dicey, although this is probably about the best matchup he's going to get all year. Oakland's been absolutely ripped apart through the air. Macklin and Kelsey, that's basically it. They should see a lot of targets, but I'm going to lead with Landry here. I'm going to go ahead and put Landry in here. He was kind of my guy who was my third kind of lock. I'm going to put him in here. And that leaves us with $47.50 left. That price range is kind of no man's land on DraftKings. So I think what we're going to end up doing here, Chop, is maybe spend down and then spend up on one spot here. So what's your kind of take here? I'll go to flex here so we can do whatever we want. You know, I'm looking around 4,700. I do like, who is it? Ryan Matthews. He's 4,900. That kind of works out for me a little bit. We can get exposure to one of those high-priced tight ends we want, but I usually don't play two tight ends on my cash team. Some people do. That's not my style here. So what are we going to do here?
Well, in this situation where you're looking at this and you are in no man's land, I don't mind in a cash game playing two tight ends, especially when you've got all this value out there at tight end. It kind of feels good to take advantage of it. Like we're stuck with one tight end right now, but you know these other guys are good plays. There's no reason not to, especially on this particular team where we're looking at Drew Brees as our quarterback. You know, you compare him with his tight end, and if you think that tight end is going to have a good game, I'm not saying you need to stack in cash game because you don't. Boy, it feels good when it just naturally falls into place like that and gives you that extra upside. I don't mind Fleener in this flex spot. Great price on him. Shootout, you kind of want to get as much exposure to this game as you can. You certainly can't do it with the price tag on Greg Olsen and Cam Newton. Mm-hmm. Might as well get a little more Saints in there in the passing game and get some Kobe Fleener.
So, Hoop, Fleener, or we've got kind of the emerging of Michael Thomas at wide receiver here. Which part of that game, you know, which one of those guys would you rather get exposure to here? Thomas is 4,300, so a little bit more expensive.
I'd take the shot on Fleener. You know, Thomas looks solid with Snead out, Snead's back. I think I think as you brought up a point earlier that last week or at this point last season was kind of the time we saw the emergence of what's his name, the tight end they had there last year. Yeah, Watson. So, this year, maybe him and Fleener get it going. The targets are there. We've seen one really big game. Good spot here against the Panthers defense that has just looked atrocious against the pass and even against the run. So I'm fine with Fleener here. I like that spot for him.
Yeah, I'll put Fleener in. Let me throw a couple other guys. Chop mentioned Fleener. And I think there's some guys who normally Hoop I would never, ever consider clicking for cash games this week. And I want to, talk me off a ledge here. I am looking at Tavon Austin. He's 3,900 this week. You look at his target market share, it's crazy. You look at all these targets. He's getting rushes. It's against this Lions team that's really bad defensively here. He's 3,900. If he was 4,500, I'd probably just gloss right over him. But the price range kind of works with this lineup here. Is he someone you're looking at, or am I kind of doing something a little off the wall this week?
Well, I mean, it's, with this type of lineup build, you're going to have to probably take a shot somewhere, you're going to have to, take a risk. And you look at a guy getting a lot of targets here, at least 6 in the last 4 games. He's been running the football as well, and he gets to face a shitty defense. So, I mean, if you're going to take a shot, why not? I'd be fine with it.
Chop, what's your take on a guy like Tavon Austin? The 3,900 price tag, it's pretty inviting. I like all these targets. I feel like even though he's not really doing too much with them, I know he's going to get 8 or 9 targets. He's probably going to catch 5 or 6 of them because he just catches all these across, barely across the line of scrimmage. He gets a couple rushing attempts. He returns some kicks too here. There's a little bit of upside baked into him as well.
Well, there's upside. About 2 times a year he's going to have big games. And, that's just the fact. But it's not going to be very much more than that. but probably not the direct. I mean, I would much rather have a tight end that in that price range that I know what I'm going to kind of know what I'm going to get out of them. And there's a lot of tight ends that you can go to. I would go that route rather than a Tavon Austin, but I could see how somebody would look at the targets and be attracted to it. I just don't want to take that kind of a chance.
Another guy I was looking at, Chop, maybe you can tell me this. I was looking at him on early Monday, late Sunday, basically before Colin Kaepernick got announced the starter. That was Jeremy Curley. If Blaine Gabbert was in there, I think he would have made my cash team. A little concerned with Kaepernick in there. I don't know what kind of chemistry they're going to have here. He's just been a target monster for 3 games this year. He's had some really solid performances for his price. I've cooled off on him just a little bit with Kaepernick in there.
Yeah, he looked really good in that last game. So I understand the appeal to him. I don't think Kaepernick being in there brings him down that much. I think he is what he is. He's Jeremy Curley. He could go out there and get those targets and convert them to another 80 yards and maybe even a touchdown. But then again, he could do what he does quite often and, catch 3 passes for 20 yards. So he's too risky for me in this situation. Like I said, I keep going back to the same thing. I would rather have a workhorse tight end than take a chance on one of those small pass catchers coming out of the slot like that.
All right, so I went and thrown Fleener into this lineup. Hoop, let's close it out here. We've got 6,000, but we've got multiple ways we can kind of reshape this lineup to kind of do whatever we want here. The 6,000 price range, the first guy jumping to me is probably Will Fuller against Indianapolis. You're probably going to have DeAndre Hopkins matched up with Vontae Davis, giving Fuller a really nice matchup, and he kind of seems to perform well against the teams. Number 2 cornerback, Will Hopkins, is kind of fallen off a cliff a little bit recently. So he's interesting, but nothing really else in here. So my question to you is, do you want to shave a little salary to get a Macklin, to get a Doug Baldwin? Like Doug Baldwin, I think, is someone we kind of glossed over, but I think he's going to be pretty much in play this week too. If we get up into this 7,000 range, there's a lot of nice targets here. If I was playing Thursday and was able to put in John Brown, I would have just put John Brown in the flex and kind of moved the rest of my lineup around. But we've got Fleener in here. So do we want to shave at defense, shave at quarterback? There's a couple spots we could save a couple of dollars.
Probably. I mean, if you get down to this spot, I think it's always best to go ahead and go to defense and just make some adjustments there. Either spend up higher and, go cheaper at wide receiver, or, cut that defense, go down a little bit lower and spend up, which is probably the most optimal play here.
So I'll take out the Titans. Who mentioned the Texans here? That was you, Hoop?
Yeah.
So let's get Chop here on the Texans. You're down there in Texas, Chop. Do you trust them to shut down Andrew Luck on the road? Do you think they're going to get enough sacks? That offensive line is so bad. Luck throws some interceptions. Are the Texans a cash game play? I'm having trouble wrapping my head around it.
Yeah, I don't think that I'm not really worried about holding the points down for the opposition when I'm looking at a defense. You're not going to get shutouts in the NFL very often. What you look at is, can they get pressure on him, which could lead to turnovers. That's sacks and possible pick six, which you can't count on interception for touchdowns, but helps when you put yourself in those kind of opportunities. I absolutely think that they're cash game viable. They're going to get pressure on him. They can get pressure even without J.J. Watt. And Indianapolis is just bad at protecting the guy. So, and that's too bad, but that's just the way it is. So, yeah, they're very much cash game friendly.
All right, Hoop. The Texans or your Detroit Lions from up there. They're home. They're against the Rams. You don't want to.
The Lions. There's one thing I've learned living here my whole life. The Lions.
Doesn't Ziggy come back this week out there?
It doesn't matter. The Lions are never the answer.
All right, so you're shooting me down. I'm going to play. I don't know if I'm personally going to put the Texans in here, but the reason they work is because now the guy we were kind of debating, Jeremy Macklin, fits in there.
Yeah,
I'd really like Doug Baldwin against Atlanta. This matchup is a premier one for him. He should avoid Johnson. I think he works a lot out of the slot, so it's just going to be a really good matchup for him. I'd try to get him in here over a guy like Macklin, but Macklin fits in here, Hoop. Is that kind of the last guy in the lineup?
Yeah, I like him. I mean, 6.3 fits. I mean,
what about Pryor? with Kessler, Kessler, is he going to be playing quarterback all the time? Like, is this a week 3 Terrell Pryor game where he gets, quarterback snaps and running back snaps?
Yeah, possibly.
But I think Chop, it's going to be Macklin, right? Like to finish out this lineup.
I think it fits. I don't want to have to do any more changes and go down to any more price reduction anywhere else. I feel good about the lineup, so I think it's Macklin. Not to mention, I like him anyway, but I don't feel like good about trying to pull another 400 out somewhere to upgrade.
That's what I did last week on my cash team. I did the Grinders live show at 11:30 to 12:30. So I get off and I got to make all these changes. And I just kind of blew apart my whole cash team and ended up with something that, looking back on it, I really shouldn't have. So the worst thing you can do is just kind of blow up your whole lineup last second to try to do something else. So I definitely don't want to mess around too much here, Chop. I think we just plug in Macklin.
I think so. I like him anyway. It's a great matchup for him.
Yeah, I like him.
All right, so I'll put Macklin in at this point in time. And what I kind of want to do, we've got about 3 or 4 minutes left here. Hoop, let's say we take out Drew Brees here and we go with a cheaper quarterback. Let's just kind of show the people at home what you can get here. I think I'm personally not on Tyrod Taylor. I want a quarterback that I think can get me that 300-yard bonus here. But a guy like Hoyer, I think, is in play. Some people really like Alex Smith, too. That's a long shot to get a 300-yard bonus, in my opinion. Dak Prescott, he might even get Dez Bryant back. He's been really good here.
Yeah, so for me, I mean, you look at – pull up Tyrod's game log. I mean, last year the whole thing with him was super safe play. He's back to doing that again this year. I mean, he is –
You're just not getting – like, he's safe for these 15 –
5K.
Games. What about game script? We really like McCoy too. Like, I think game script can get away from him here pretty quickly.
Yeah, but you look at what won last week, stacking up the Steelers. You had the quarterback, you had the running back, you had the wide receiver. I know this is a different type team, so I'm not too worried about it.
Just a little bit.
3K, what do you want?
What do you think, Chop? Is I know a lot of people are going to like Tyrod Taylor. I get it because the price is good. I actually wrote him up as a halfway decent play. But you're just not going to get the 300-yard bonus. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But I think he's going to be more apt to get you 15 to 20. And when guys like Breeze and Palmer and people who play Cam Newton, if he doesn't get a concussion, he should have a huge game. You're going to be behind possibly 10 to 15 points at the quarterback position.
Okay. Got to refresh my memory on how many points I get for the 300-yard bonus.
You get 3.
How many points do I get if he rushes for 30 yards here, Tyrod Taylor?
You get 3. Well, he's he's probably gonna rush for those 30 yards. I'm not gonna.
I know. See,
but he's a 5.3K quarterback.
Yeah, that's the thing is the money's so good here at 5.3 that he's definitely a guy I'm eyeballing. I would say this as far as like stacking those two guys up, man. If you expect Buffalo to score some points, which I think we do, it makes sense to get the two guys who absolutely dominate the ball. I mean, you're not going to get much. You get down inside the 5-yard line, there's really two options. McCoy's going to run it in, or Tyrod's really going to run it in. Like you're going to get rushing touchdowns possibly out of him. I think it makes sense. And at this price tag, you almost can't go wrong. Game script could get out of control, but if that happens, that probably means that he contributed to it in the first half anyway. So, and he's already paid off his value by halftime. It makes sense.
Breeze, see what I did. See what I did here. We'll go to Hoop here. I put Taylor in. I moved from Howard to McCoy to kind of get, the Bills have a really high team total this week. So I did that. Do we want to put in the Bills D2 and just kind of go all in on that game, or do we want to maybe go back to our Titans play?
I think I much more prefer the correlation between Tyrod and McCoy, and then actually, essentially going all in with the Bills. I mean, that's a little bit too much negative. So I wouldn't do that. What do we have left there? 5 point
yeah, we've got 5,100 for a flex play. Like if the Jamal Charles news comes out good, I think we can go to him. I really like Ryan Matthews around this price range too. 4,900. Washington can't stop anybody. I think he's in play. I think Jimmy Graham, you talked about 2 tight ends. Graham, that injury, it's basically been one of the worst historically, but he looks phenomenal. And this matchup against Atlanta is off the charts. I can even go Carlos Hyde. Carlos Hyde's such a big part of that San Francisco offense. I think he's 5,100. How do we round this out, Chop? We got about a minute.
Oh man, I thought you went to Pet on that one. He was eyeballing that. I mean, listen, I think you still have late swap, so you can put Jamal Charles. You can put Jamal Charles in there and see how the news comes down later in the afternoon.
Yeah, it's Thursday. What about Ryan Matthews, Hooper? You think he's a solid play this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's fine. There's actually a lot. I don't mind the tight ends that I talked about, Kelsey or Graham, Matthews. Charles gets the good news. We still have a late spot for football, so like Chop said, you can make some adjustments on the fly there.
All right, I'll just put I think Ryan Matthews against that Washington run D. We saw what Terrence West was doing until it got Mark Trestman fired. I think Ryan Matthews can kind of do the same thing. But that's going to about do it for this show. Don't forget, guys, next week it's going to be behind the incentive, so you're going to have to pay for it. And that's going to wrap it up for this show. I'm Britt Devine, and for Hoop and for Chop, thanks for watching, and we out ya.